Emerging from the depths of Toronto with a more mature but just as catchy sound, pop rock quartet Jane's Party released their third full-length album, exposing their new, true-to-themselves vibe, unlike anything they've made before. We have Jeff and Tom here with us today, and they started making music together in 2006, and they've come a long way since their first collection of songs that was actually self-produced in the Jane and Finch neighborhood just down the street from our studio here on 96.9 Radio Humber. I'm Chelsea Pop, here with the boys, our January band of the month, Jane's Party. How are you guys doing today?
Great.
Yeah, awesome. So, can you tell me how you chose your name? Is it because of the Jane and Finch neighborhood in Toronto?
Nailed it. Yeah, that was great.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we went to school together, so we lived in that sort of area, that neighborhood, and actually that's where we recorded our first record, sort of in a garage there. So yeah, that's where the name came from.
Awesome. And the first album is called Garage Sessions. Released all the way back in 2009, and now 7 years later, you kind of evolved. Can you tell me how your music has changed since the first album?
Well, yeah, we moved out, left the garage. That was step one. Yeah, I think with every record, it was like another step towards a different environment. So like we recorded our follow-up record to that one in sort of like a rustic studio, I guess you could call it that, which still had some of that sort of almost like that garage grimy vibe that was conducive to four guys just jamming together. And then after that, with our newest record, it was more like a pro studio setup, but it was like in the wilderness, in the woods, so it still had that sort of jammy vibe, but it was, again, another level towards a more produced studio environment.
Awesome. And Tunnel Visions is your new album, and you guys had that produced by members of Blue Rodeo. How was that?
Right. Yeah, Greg Keeler. It was amazing.
How does that even happen?
Well, for us there was sort of a linear path, or a 1 degree of separation. A good friend of ours, Devin Cuddy, is another guy who's been sort of playing around the Cameron House scene, and I actually lived with him up at York for a couple years as well. We all became really good friends, started sort of making music together, jamming, playing the Cameron House, and over the years this led to that. He actually recorded his second record at Greg's house, his studio, Lost Cause, and we all played on the record. Did you play on the record?
Yeah.
Yeah, you played on the record too, right? Yeah, so anyways, we all went up there and absolutely loved his space. It's really cool, like rustic sort of like farmhouse type vibe. He's got every room decked out with different gear. Like the living room kind of, has the drums, the basement has the bass amp, the dining room has the piano, the keyboards, and upstairs in his master bedroom is, the control room. And yeah, so we absolutely loved the vibe, and we said we got to get back up here and record our stuff here. So. Right.
And working with legendary Canadian musicians, what kind of things did you learn from that experience?
Me? Oh man, so much. I mean, I think one of the things is don't get too married to your idea of how a song should be. I think that was the main thing. I think Greg has a really great, and Jim, but I think Greg in particular has a really, really great sort of pop sensibility when it comes to songwriting. Things as simple as don't play the ride, on that part of the track. Stick to the hi-hats, or we're going to try this song in 4/4 instead of 3/4, little things like that. I remember I played bass on a track, and I had this whole bass line that I thought was amazing that I'd written. He's like, no, you just gotta play it, bouncy 4 on the floor kind of thing. So I think, learning that how you think a song should be is not necessarily the way, other people hear it.
Right. And with this album, you guys decided to bring in other voices for the first time, you've never done that on any other albums. Why did you decide to bring in other voices to collaborate?
I think we had reached a point where we thought that our input was sort of all on tape and on paper, and we wanted to see sort of how much farther along it could go. And we just have a lot of great friends around Toronto that are really great songwriters. So we thought, why not involve them in it as well? So we just tried it out, just sent out a couple of demos and things to people, and we really liked what came back. So then I think it sort of became obvious, let's get our friends sort of involved in this, because it's just it proved that we can make it better.
Right. It took you 2 years to create the album, right? And that's a long creative process. What were you hoping to convey when you were putting the album out?
Like what we wanted to.
Like, what did you want people to take away from it?
Oh, I see. Okay.
Your fans.
I think at this point we were, really sort of going in a different direction. Songwriting, we'd kind of gone from the garagey sort of like, jam vibe sort of session that we'd done on the last 2 records, and we wanted something like a little more polished, and a little more in a direction that was using things outside of our comfort zone, outside of our realm of sort of like, we'd always sort of gravitated towards vintage gear, vintage instruments, and that was kind of it, And this was the first record where we really started to sort of layer stuff, and I think collaborating with the Darcys on Coming On Strong is an example of that. Stepping way outside our comfort zone in sounds. Some of the synth stuff, the horn stuff they did on the record.
Yeah, so it was like a learning experience, getting out of your comfort zone.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think for a question like that, I think a lot of times when you put out a record, it's almost implied that you sort of had this like idea off the start and you really wanted to deliver with that one idea. But I think, like you're saying, 2 years is quite a long time, and some of the songs were actually written before that. It kind of becomes like a story in itself, where you start off with separate ideas and you have this idea of a record and you record them one at a time, and then that changes and you change, and then by the end it comes out as something totally different.
Right.
I think it's hard to like narrow down just a single focused idea, and often it's, I think, an amalgamation of different thoughts and feelings, especially with us. There's like, we're all writing all the songs and we're all contributing to making them, so it's a lot more complex than just like a single sort of focused idea. It's a lot of different things over a long period of time.
Right. And even like people who listen to your album, they can take away completely different ideas than what you were expecting them to take as well. So,
often that's the case, yeah.
Yeah. So you guys have played a lot of shows in Toronto. You've played many venues, and you were also on a huge Europe tour. Do you have any crazy nights, memories from that tour, or even in Toronto?
On the tour, I'd say Poznan was Poland was a big one for all of us. It was like, I don't know, it was like almost like Beatles-esque screams and applause, even before we were on stage. So that was pretty wild. The response there was out of this world for us. And then even walking around the streets of Poznan after the day after and getting recognized in the street was pretty crazy. Being the support act too. Yeah. I can't imagine how it is for Tom Odell. So that tour was with Tom Odell.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was one of the craziest gigs I think I've ever played.
Yeah, it's crazy that you went on a huge Europe tour after. Like, have you ever toured outside of Canada before that?
We had gone down to Boston before.
Ages ago.
But that was sort of, I don't know, that was more to do some recording, and we played like a house concert type thing. So nothing that real.
That was the first serious sort of get out of Canada thing.
Yeah. You guys are big supporters of Canadian music. You put out a Spotify playlist for your fans abroad. What do you think about the state of Canadian music right now?
Wow.
What do you think is to come? Do you think that the surge of popular Canadian musicians is kind of a good thing for you guys?
I don't know if it's good or bad. I don't know, like even Tom Odell was like on the road, he's like, yeah, just so many great Canadian bands out there. And he's totally right. I think it's great to have like inspiration all the time. Like you always hear about a great new band that's out of Canada often that puts out a really great record or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's definitely tougher than playing Europe as far as like how spread out places are. I mean, that's always been a factor, I think. But I think there are there are communities that support music and support artists and support new music, and I think that's a great thing in a very different way than overseas. Even we have friends that have traveled the country playing house concerts, playing in people's living rooms and stuff. So even from that level all the way up, I think there's a great support system here, and I think people love music. So
yeah, it's true. And house parties are like coming back. Like they're kind of on a huge wave right now, especially in Toronto. Do you guys play house shows?
Yeah, we
are you
actually
interested
played
in-
a house concert. What was it, a couple months ago?
Before we left Ontario, yeah, it was great.
Up like in near Collingwood,
Yeah.
at this guy Steve Vipon's place. It was actually really cool.
How does the vibe there kind of differ from like huge stadium shows that you were playing?
Intimate.
Yeah.
It's quiet after you finish playing. After you finish the song, it's like.
Yeah. Would
That's
you
great.
prefer that? Would you prefer to have a connection with people who are listening to your music, or would you rather be in that big?
It's such a different. It's like doing two completely different things.
Right.
It just so happens that you're like physically delivering the same material, but it's such a different experience. I think like even though a small living room might feel you can categorize it as an intimate room or something. I think there's a real intimacy at a big show too, and we experienced that just these last 3 weeks in Europe. Like people that are at the front and people that come to the merch booth afterwards and talk to you, they speak to you like they were right next to you, like along for the ride the whole time. Even though it looks like a massive airport like hangar or whatever we were playing, like it still can be. It's often a very intimate experience for a lot of people listening.
I think for me, like playing the intimate sort of living room house concert thing is one of my favorites, just because I like hearing the sound of my voice in the air, as opposed to like through a huge sound system. I've always found that I could sing better, and I had more control over what was sort of happening and my voice in that setting. So for me, it's like a refreshing thing. Like, oh yeah, like I can actually hear like every little thing that I'm doing now, as opposed to on some of those big stages, huge subwoofers, and like you're just trying to blast your own voice in the monitor as loud as you can, screaming people. So it's refreshing to play in that setting.
Right. Are you guys happy that you're back in Toronto? Do you have anything that you're going to start working on now that you're done that tour?
Yeah, we've got many new songs on the table. I guess the way our process sort of works is we all sort of present songs. And then if we like them enough, we start playing them live. And then, it's interesting the journey that a song takes from like when it's put on the table to how it sounds, after we've played it live or toured it for a while. So I think we're sort of in that stage of playing new songs live.
Right.
And we've got a couple that we've sort of integrated into our current set. And I think the next step is to start demoing and recording those.
Awesome. So where can we find you online and find your music?
Chainsparty.com.
Awesome.
www.chainsparty.com.
Straight up.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Jane's Party, for being our January Band of the Month here on 96.9 Radio Humber. I'm Chelsea Pop, and you can listen and watch this interview on radio.humber.ca or the Radio Humber YouTube page, as well as an acoustic performance from the band. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Chelsea.
Awesome.